Hello and welcome to Business Insider with Mario Toneguzzi. Joining me today is Todd Throndson, who is Managing Director, Principal of Avison Young in Calgary. Thanks for joining us today, Todd.
Well, you're very welcome. Good morning.
Well, we've had an interesting few months with COVID, obviously, but also for the Calgary economy. We've been dealing with falling oil prices for the last 6 years. Tell me where the downtown office market sits today because of those two factors.
Well, as far as our most recent numbers go, which we just completed at the end of June, downtown is at 25% vacancy. As far as hard vacancy goes between head lease space and sublease space, there is a lot of questions about what the shadow vacancy is going to be like, and we know it's there. We don't know the exact number as to how much space companies are holding back for their own needs or trying to figure out and make decisions on how they're going to deal with that excess space as we move forward. But I think the short answer is we're all very nervous about what the impact is going to be to the companies in our downtown marketplace, given all the stress and conflict that they've had to deal with this year.
So we've had this kind of 25% and a little bit north of 25% vacancy for quite some time now. What have been some of the things that you've seen in the market that try to mitigate that much loss in space? What kind of things are landlords doing, or ideas that are out there to deal with that?
Well, the city has a program in place right now to try and incent suburban tenants to move into the downtown. So they've got incentives in place for those companies to be able to take advantage of if they feel that the downtown is a market where they want to be. So that's one example. Other examples are landlords are just trying to be extremely creative with their buildings, whether it be spending money on the buildings to provide new and more modern features for the property, whether that means building show suites, which is a very consistent methodology that most landlords downtown are trying to use to make it very easy for decisions to be made by tenants as to whether or not to move into the building. So, I don't know that there's anything new in relation to different strategies that have been used over the past 4 or 5 years as we've gone through a very challenging energy market. But landlords are really the biggest thing they're bringing to the table right now is trying to bring strategy and creativity with regards to how they structure the actual financial terms of a lease, or give tenants flexibility in the lease, because that's one of the biggest things that tenants in today's marketplace are looking for. Is we don't know what the future is going to look like, and we need to make sure that our lease allows us flexibility, whether that means to go and grow, or whether that means to downsize, or whether that means to actually terminate a lease at some point in time during the term of lease. So flexibility is a big component. Landlords have to come to the table with cash to try and make sure that tenants don't incur extra expenses to either relocate or to complete renovations within their space. So cash is a big component of what they're trying to do. And a lot of landlords are using different free rent structures to try and make sure that tenants, whether that means immediate relief from rent, or that means relief from rent over the next 12 to 24 months. A lot of landlords are using free rent as a way to try and make it easier for tenants to make decisions today.
So within this current environment, obviously the elevated vacancies rate, I'm sure that has an impact on pricing, in a downward direction. Landlords are doing things to buildings. There's incentives out there. This is actually an ideal time, is it not, for people to maybe come to the downtown core if they're outside the core, or even to move to the sort of flight to quality to better buildings. Is that right?
Yeah, I think tenants are looking at this timing in a multitude of different ways. Now, first and foremost, they are looking at ways to make sure that they're giving their own existing business the best opportunity to be successful moving forward. So when they start to think about their real estate, that's a very expensive component on their budget line for them to look at on an annualized basis. So tenants, if they can, and if they have the opportunity, are definitely taking a look at the marketplace. They're taking a look at how they can restructure things with their existing landlords, but they're also taking a look at what the building is going to be able to offer them going into the future. One of the things that this pandemic has done, it has caused a lot of organizations to rethink how they're going to use office space. There's been lots of commentary in the media and in our industry with respect to how are tenants going to use their space moving forward. Are they going to have a component of their staff work from home? Are they going to completely restructure how they define and design their space? Are they going to have bench seating? Are they going to go with small cubicles versus larger cubicles?
Yeah.
There's been lots of commentary. I haven't seen significant examples of it yet, but there has been commentary about a lot of offices and companies are going to be looking at going back to your traditional office layout so that it gives people the sense of security when they come back to the office. You know, you asked the question earlier about landlords, what are they doing? Almost every landlord out there is trying to figure out how they can make their building as safe as possible so that they can make tenants feel that now is a great time to come back into their space. You know, the downtown today, and this is a guess because we don't have factual data for this, but downtown, if you walk around and you go through buildings, you're probably looking at an occupancy level of somewhere between 10 to 25% throughout the downtown of the tenants that are actually occupying space, because most staff are still working from home. So a big component about what landlords are thinking about is how can we ensure that people feel safe when they come back into their building? Do we have proper sanitization opportunities throughout the building? How are we going to make people feel comfortable going into the elevators? Elevators are a big question mark in the psychology of a lot of people right now as to whether or not they're going to feel comfortable moving back to the office.
So I'm curious about that. I'm glad you mentioned that because I was just talking to somebody the other day regarding that. So how many people are allowed in an elevator? So if you're up on the 20th floor of a building, like how long do you have to wait for an elevator?
Well, today I'll use 8th Avenue Place as an example because that's where we have our space. I came into the building, and as has been the same for the last couple of weeks that we've been back in our office, and I've not seen anybody in the elevator banks for our bank. So every day I go up the elevator by myself, I go down the elevator by myself. So you go up over to the escalators that take us up to the plus 15. You might see 1 or 2 people in the building. So it's still very quiet downtown.
Yeah.
And, you know, most buildings have tried to be as safe as possible with the elevator banks, and most buildings, I believe, are looking at putting 4 stationary spots in the 4 corners to try and give as much distance as possible between people.
Okay. So there was a time that, you know, you looked at Calgary's downtown and all you could see was these massive cranes all over the place, building all these big skyscrapers to the skies. How long do you think it's going to take for a new major office building to be built in the downtown again?
To be honest, I think that's an impossible question to answer. One of the great things about this city is the business community's ability to, you know, get their back up and drive forward and understand that even though things are difficult today, there's an opportunity and a way and a will to make things better in the future. So companies are always finding ways to move themselves up and move the economy up. And Calgary historically has always done that. And I think it will happen again. Oil and gas will come back at some point in time. So that will be more of a driver of when companies are growing to the extent that they believe the right corporate decision for them is to build a new building or move into brand new space. You know, a big financial components of making decisions are very, very important for a lot of organizations. But there are other reasons why people decide that they want to build new office buildings, and whether that's technology, which could be a significant driver moving forward of why someone would decide to build something new, whether it be to ensure that their organization has the proper branding in the downtown marketplace for where they want to take their business and their organization. That could be a component of why somebody wants to build a new building, and it could be a statement. Could be a statement where some organization, whichever organization that is doing exceedingly well, and they want to be a symbol for the rest of the city that times are prosperous again. And this is an example of what we can do to ensure that the psychology, not only of their staff, but of their clientele and their potential clientele, all see them as a business that's doing very well. So having said all of that, there's a lot of space for people to choose from when they make their decisions. Most organizations over the last 4 years have downsized. We generally don't have the same size of tenancies anymore that we did 4 or 5 years ago, but we're looking at a time frame that is out there. Let me put it that way. It's going to take quite a bit of time before we get to a place where someone's building a downtown office tower in downtown Calgary.
Okay, super. Thanks for joining us today, Todd.
My pleasure, Mario. Thanks a lot.
Okay, that was Todd Throndson, who is Managing Director, Principal of the Avison Young office in Calgary. This has been Business Insider with Mario Toneguzzi. Thanks for joining us today.